Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel where stories and other random things take center stage. So welcome to today's video and part 2 of my recommendations for for after Camelot Rising. So this time we're going to be recommending 12, I'm going to have 12 more recommendations. These are 13 to 24. So let's begin with number 13, which is a lovely romance by the name of I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. Oh, and number 14 is The Ghost We Keep by Mason Deaver. So, yeah, 13 and 14, same author. May as well do it that way. So, I Wish You All the Best follows Ben, who tell their parents, or they come out to their parents as non-binary, and as a result, their parents kick them out, and they move in with their sister Hannah. And they end up enrolling in a new school, and they meet Nathan, who they slowly start, really liking and stuff like that. But they also end up dealing with a lot of different family issues and also some mental health issues as well. And I think it's one of my favorite books. Definitely one of my favorite books of all time. I love that. I love the book. The Ghost We Keep is an exploration of grief, and we follow, what is our main character's name? I'm a terrible person. I cannot remember our main character's name. I'm so sorry. But their brother, I think it's they, because I'm pretty sure they're also I'm pretty sure they're non-binary if I remember correctly. The brother Ethan passed away, and they basically now have to deal with it, and the one person that maybe would understand them is their brother's friend, who we find out later is something else entirely, Marcus, and they basically explore grief and how it affected them when their brother passed away. Basically, it's definitely an interesting exploration of grief. It's a very interesting book, and I read it at an interesting time, so it helped me in a way. Number 15 and 16 are also by the same author, so I'm recommending Camp and Jack of Hearts and Other Parts by L.C. Rosen. Camp basically is another romance taking place in camp, and we follow Dell, who is in love with this other guy, and he comes in and he is changed to this guy's basically dream guy, but but when he gets the guy, now Dell has to figure out how much he's willing to give up and how much he's willing to change. Jack of Hearts and Other Parts follows Jack, who at his friend's suggestion, basically runs this advice column called Jack of Hearts and Other Parts, as the book suggests. And it is a sex advice column. And it talks about how, and basically he gives sex advice and all that stuff. But then he ends up having a stalker. And he and his friends start trying to figure out who is stalking him. Interestingly, the one thing I find about these books is that they explore such different topics, and they do it so well, and they're also both very sex positive, so I think that's awesome. The next two reads are also romances by the same author, and I usually recommend them in the same way I recommend Sarah J. Maas, and that is Red, White, and Royal Blue and One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. I reviewed One Last Stop, and I have a playlist of Casey McQuiston videos, so I'll link it below. Red, White, and Royal Blue takes place in a universe where basically Donald Trump wasn't elected, and instead a woman was, and she becomes president, and along with and then her son and daughter, they're both part of a biracial family, and they end up becoming becoming, I guess you could say, center stage in American politics in a way. So they basically, our main character Alex has a rivalry. A rivalry with the Prince of Wales, Henry. They're basically arch nemesis. It's very interesting. However, after an altercation, they now have to pretend to be friends, and from there they start falling in love, and it's so cute. It's adorable. It is adorable. When I read it the first time, I gave it 5 stars. I'm pretty sure I read it again. I'll give it 5 stars. I read One Last Stop once and I gave it 5 stars. I'm quite certain it'll be the same. It's swoon-worthy romance. One Last Stop follows August, who really doesn't believe in in miracles and like she's very cynical. She doesn't believe in magic and a bunch of other things. But she ends up meeting this girl in the train, and her name is Jane. And it turns out that she is very different because Jane looks like she's from the 70s. Like she has, she looks like she's in the into punk rock or in like a punk band and stuff like that. But it turns out that that Jane is from the 70s and she is displaced in time. So August now attempts to help her and try to help her get back to her time, but at what cost is she willing to do so? And it's so adorable. These are the things that I want to read all the time. They're so good. Okay, so the next 2 reads are also by the same author. I like that I'm pairing these because I usually recommend these together as well. And those are Again But Better and Better Together by Christine Riccio. I have reviewed Better Together, but I have not reviewed Again But Better here. I hope to do that soon. Again But Better is it's basically a study abroad book, and it follows Shane, who basically lied to her parents and said that she was going to be studying in pre-med, but instead she's actually doing creative writing in England. And she ends up, making some friends, but also meeting this guy named Pilot, who they start getting such great chemistry, and it's so cute, and they start falling in love. But then she when she's about to tell him though, he's already gone, and she ends up basically we see her years later, and she already kind of studied her doctorates and got her doctor's degree and all that stuff, but she gets a second chance to do it all over due to some magic, and she ends up going back in time, and she and Pilot are allowed to do things over. And so that is what that's about. Better Together follows sisters Jamie and Siri, who were separated by their parents when they had a very turbulent divorce, and they have not seen each other in years. However, they find each other in a Rediscover Yourself retreat, and they end up deciding to switch places. And basically, they decide to confront each other's individual parents, when that they never got to spend time with, and along the way they find romance. The next read I want to recommend is the Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. Basically, we follow, I don't know how to explain this because these are individual novellas, but it kind of starts off with us following an android, and she is with these people, and they kind of treat her more like a person than the others used to. And basically she ends up kind of making friends with them, but she mainly is solving the mystery of how these people died. And from there we discover more things about the corporate side of what's actually happening. I don't know how else to do. I don't really know how to describe Murderbot Diaries. Watch my reviews. The next 2 reads are also ones I tend to recommend in the same time. By the way, these are my last 2 reads for recommendations. After this, we start moving to the watch list. And those are Divergent and Carve the Mark. Divergent follows Triss Pryor, who basically has to take this test in order to figure out what faction she fits into, but she ends up, the result turns out to be Divergent, which means she doesn't fit into one faction. And so now she has to keep that a secret. And so she ends up choosing one of the factions that she decided to go to, and there she ends up starting to fall in love with her instructor. Carve the Mark follows these two characters, and they basically, there's like prophecy in this world, and each of these characters have like a gift, and basically our main male character Akos gets taken to serve this family known as the Novik family and the Shotet people, and basically he is serving the main girl whose name I cannot remember, because she basically feels pain, like her gift is pain, and he can cancel out gifts, and that is basically what happens, and we see them develop a friendship as well as a romance, so it's lovely. And then my last recommendation for this video is Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball basically follows Goku, who meets Bulma, who almost kills him with a car, and she's looking for the Dragon Balls, these 7 magical orbs that basically grant the wisher any wish, well, as long as they can do it. And basically she's looking for them, and she ends up she asks him for his Dragon Ball, but he doesn't give it to her. So she agrees to be her bodyguard and eventually let her borrow it. So he goes to an adventure and learn about the world. So yeah, those are my recommendations for now. I'll see you tomorrow for my last set of recommendations. And until then, consume stories.